Hi, we'll continue on here. I noticed the video cut out as I was talking over this slide, so we'll just pick it up right here, and I'll explain what I have here in a second. But in talking about the absorptive capacity of the small intestine, it's a small intestine because it's about 1 centimeter in diameter. The length is very long, but small being in terms of the diameter. It's about 1 inch in diameter. The large intestine is like 3 inches in diameter. And so to move from this picture to this picture, we can see it's all coiled up in there. It's all one tube. It's all connected together, duodenum, jejunum, ileum, 21 feet to accomplish its main job, absorption. So in this picture here, disregard the page numbers, but if you cut there, it's hard to tell where jejunum begins and ileum ends, whatever. But if it's cut right here, that's the end of the duodenum, beginning of jejunum, and that's the end of ileum. Okay, and you can see you'd have 21 feet all along here. This is called the root of the mesentery. The main job of the intestine is absorption, and it's highly modified to absorb by increasing its surface area. You have 3 levels of unfolding to increase the absorptive surface area, and I'll explain this picture in a minute. The modifications for the absorption of foodstuffs include the plica, which are circular folds that you can see with the naked eye. The villi, now you're starting to get microscopic, but it's a folding of the mucosa. They're like 1 millimeter finger-like projections. Maybe you could notice that if you look carefully enough, but really you see it under the microscope much better. Then the microvilli, which is a folding of the cell membrane, and they form this microvilli brush border, and that's the border of which you absorb things. And that's the key thing here, absorption. So these are the 3 levels to increase the absorptive surface area. And absorptive is underlined. That's the whole goal of digestion. If you've digested the small enough molecules, turn all the polymers into monomers, turn the glycogen into simple sugars, turn the proteins into amino acids, break down the fats into the free fatty acids, and you can absorb them all through the intestinal capillaries and the lacteals. Okay, so that's mission accomplished for the digestive system. You have some enzymes to finish off any digestion that needs to be done. Those are called the brush border enzymes. I have a slide on that. So what I want to do is look at those 3 layers of foldings: the plica, the villi, and the microvilli. Now let's focus in on this right there. We've unfolded a part of the mucosal layer here, so you can kind of see these big folds are the circular folds. Circular folds is another name for plica circularis, or I just have plica here. Let's focus in on this. So what we have here in this red line is the muscularis mucosa. Muscularis mucosa, my red line. So I tried to draw this one right there. And then all these little black bumps I drew around it is a folding of the epithelium, which form the villi. Now, deep to the epithelium, this green connective tissue, all the way down to muscularis mucosa, that's all mucosa. So that's why I say the villi are a folding of the mucosa. But notice deep to the muscularis mucosa is submucosa, this blue connective tissue. The plica fold all the way down into the submucosal layer. So that's why I say the plica is a folding of the submucosa. Okay? So moving on to talk about the brush border, you have to look at a villi, which has the lacteal and the blood vessels in there. It's lined with a columnar epithelium. Look at one columnar cell. On one side, the cell membrane is folded, and so the microvilli is increasing the absorptive surface area at the cell membrane level. So this forms brush border microvilli. And in that microvilli brush border, you're going to have some enzymes. Here's a picture of the brush border enzymes. They're actually in the brush border. And if there are polymers like starch that have not been digested along the way, this is your last chance to digest them, break them into smaller molecules that can be absorbed. So I'll just note, study this slide, know the brush border enzymes. Enough said. Here's a picture that we of a model we studied earlier. So go back and study. You should kind of like be able to identify all these things like I went through that previously. I don't want to do it again. Everything's uploaded and pre-recorded. You can study it again yourself. I'm going to move on along the digestive tract. Let's talk about the colon or large intestine. So here it is isolated out of the body cavity. So we can talk about it. So here's the end of the ileum going into the large intestine. So you've accomplished most of the absorption. By the time you get to the colon or large intestine, I'll just say colon because it's shorter, but note it's also called the large intestine. There's not much left to absorb. Maybe the colon can accomplish some absorption of water and fat-soluble vitamins. That's about it. And in doing so, by absorbing that water, it'll help compact the feces at the rectum. When you get to the rectum down here, you distend the rectal wall. That's where you get the feeling that you got to go. But anyways, let's talk about the anatomy here. The food stuff as it passes along through the small intestine to large intestine, it's got to go through that ileocecal valve where it'll be in the cecum, this little pouch, which is the beginning of the ascending colon. So note the ileocecal valve. They look like these little lips, okay? They're passing food, past food stuff from ileum, the end of the small intestine, to the cecum, which is the beginning of the large intestine. So know the cecum, know the vermiform appendix, which hangs off the little edge right there. That's the thing that can be clinically significant. If you have fecal matter that clogs this area, it can strangulate the blood flow and it can become really inflamed. Okay, if this gets clogged with fecal matter, that's when you have to remove it. It'll cause a lot of pain. And you want to get to it before it bursts. You don't want that fecal matter um, in there because when it gets clogged with fecal matter and cuts off the blood flow, it starts to enlarge, right? Because maybe blood can get in, but maybe blood cannot get out, kind of a thing. You want to get to that before it perforates. That's why it's an emergency surgery. Could save your life. So know the vermiform appendix. They just call it the appendix, but in anatomy, called the vermiform appendix because vermiform means worm-like. When it's not clogged, it's lymph tissue. It looks like a little bit of a worm. So know the vermiform appendix. Vermiform means shaped like a worm, worm-like. Then you're going to go up the this whole ascending colon. But do you see how the large intestine has a pocketed appearance? All those little pockets are called the haustra. Haustra. It's not labeled, but I'll just write it down. So you need to know haustra. Haustrum, singular. Ostra plural. So this whole thing is the ascending colon. You have a little fold there. It's on the right side. Remember, liver's on the right, so that's on the right side by the liver. It's the right colic flexure. It has to fold because the liver's in the way. So you can call that the ascending colon ends at the right colic flexure, easy to remember. Or you can call it hepatic flexure. I call it both. No, both. The hepatic flexure is there, although it's not pictured. The liver would be there. So there's my hostra. Now I'll highlight it in green. I just picked a couple to highlight. Little pockets. Also know the Taenia coli. Highlight it in green. You have about like three ribbon-like things. They're on different sides. I can see one here, but there's about three ribbon-like Taenia coli. What they are, it's actually it's derived from that longitudinal layer of muscularis externa. Okay, it's reduced to three ribbons. When those three ribbons kind of contract, it kind of creates this pocketed appearance, which is derived from the longitudinal layer of muscularis externa. Now, so the muscularis externa, the longitudinal part, is a full layer in other parts of the GI tract. But here in the large intestine, it's reduced just to three ribbons, and we call it the Taenia coli. There's the transverse colon from one red arrow to the other red arrow. It kind of loops down like a hammock. There's the transverse mesocolon, but it's not labeled. But just know from right colic flexure to left colic flexure, in between you have that sagging transverse colon. It's the longest part, and the greater curvature of the stomach would kind of be right around there, right on top of it. So there's that picture of that. How you have the fat apron, it's covering the transverse colon. So basically, kind of see how it fits in there. About 45 centimeters. You don't have to know that. I'm not going to ask you that. I mean, so it is the longest part of the large intestine, though. Longest part. If you ever get that cramping feeling in your stomach area, it could be your stomach or it could be the transverse colon cramping. I'll just say it runs from right colic flexure to left colic flexure. Now, the left colic flexure is also called the splenic flexure because remember, spleen's on the left. Go with that one, or you can call it the hepatic flexure for the right one. And then it's higher up here, and then it goes all the way down. That's the descending colon. And then from the descending colon, it takes an S-shaped turn. That's the sigmoid colon. So let's just get these terms down. Notice the names of the colon, ascending, descending, are named for the direction in which the food stuff is moving. Up, ascending, down, descending. Sigmoid colon, named for its shape, shaped like the letter S. S-shaped. Notice how the pockets disappear. The Taenia coli disappear because the Taenia coli at around the rectum restores its full layer. It's not just the three ribbons, it restores its full layer. So at the rectum, which is this basically stores feces, but also anatomically, longitudinal layer is fully restored. Again, once again, it's not the three little Taenia coli. They're fully restored there. So the longitudinal layer of muscularis externa, fully restored. Here's another picture showing you duodenum, ascending colon, descending colon. You can also see the lips. They look like lips. I call it a valve, ileocecal valve, vermiform appendix. That's the end of the ileum. Okay, that ribbon-like thing. Taenia coli, the little pockets, hostra. I see the superior mesenteric artery, the inferior mesenteric artery. We'll get into that. The descending colon leads to the sigmoid colon, and down here is the rectum. There we go. I see the transverse colon, the Taenia coli, the fat apron, which is the greater omentum. The Taenia coli, the white line, that's the transverse colon, right? I think 527, maybe it's going for the hostra. What's 491? Duodenum. What's 496 and 495? Pancreas, pancreatic duct. It's cool, let's move on. Well, here's the anus, here's the rectum. It's the fixed terminal part. It's fixed, it's kind of attached to the sacrum, and it's basically the terminal end of the intestine. It's located in the pelvis. Okay, the sigmoid colon is superior. You have the anal canal surrounded by the internal and external anal sphincter. You got rectum. I don't know, more room for notes. Okay, so now for anal canal, it's surrounded by an internal and external anal sphincter. It's the external one that's skeletal muscle. It's the internal one that's smooth muscle. The skeletal muscle is important. When the rectum distends, the reflex is to contract. Distend, contract. If the feces stretch it, it contracts, push it down toward the anal canal. You feel like you got to go. It'll relax the internal sphincter, but the external sphincter, because it's skeletal muscle, you can control it with conscious effort. And you kind of hold it in until you get to the bathroom, right? So that's pretty much the end of the digestive tract. Let me literally and figuratively correct. So let's start to talk about the blood supply to the colon and the intestines here. We already talked about the superior mesenteric artery. We'll talk about it again. Here we see a beautiful picture of the superior mesenteric artery going over the duodenum and all these branches. You don't have to know the names, just call them branches of superior mesenteric artery. So basically, the superior mesenteric artery and its branches are going to supply blood all the way, all throughout the jejunum ileum, and all throughout the large intestine, the colon, all the way up to the left colic flexure. Okay, it's been cut away there, but you can see some of these branches are going to the ascending colon there. So in this picture here, it shows that the superior mesenteric artery Okay, it's going off this way to the right, and its branches are supplying blood to the jejunum, the ileum, and the colon, all the way up to the left colic flexure. Supplies blood to jejunum, ileum, and colon up to left colic flexure. In this picture here, it's kind of an underneath view. Here's ascending, descending colon. Here is the transverse colon. This is the superior mesenteric artery right there. And all the branches have been cut, but you can see the branches from here going all the way to here, all the way to here. That's where it stops. So superior mesenteric artery supplying blood all the way up to left colic flexure in that picture. In this picture, I have pictures of models because we're not in the lab. The lab is closed, but now you have these pictures. Here's small intestines. Fits in here with our model of the transverse colon. Ascending, descending colon are behind there. But if you take this off and flip it around, you can see the superior mesenteric artery, little cut branches, SMA, are right there. They're on the back of that. Know that. So here you see these little cut branches. If you flop it over, it's going to match with these. Okay. So know the superior mesenteric artery. The inferior mesenteric artery goes off to the left because, if I face it here, this is going off this way. So it goes off to the left and it's supplying blood to the distal colon from the left colic flexure on down. We just call it distal colon. Here's a summary showing you of the superior mesenteric artery, inferior mesenteric artery, where it basically picks up where the superior one left off. Okay, that's pretty easy to understand. There's more pictures for you to see. If you can see where the blood vessels go, you know it's the inferior one. That's the superior one. Here's the inferior one. Or you can just remember, what does superior mean? Oh, it's the one up here. Inferior is below it. If you could see the end of the abdominal aorta bifurcating into common iliacs, you could see that close to each other. You know that's the inferior one. So in this picture, no matter what picture I show, remember your landmarks. If it's going over the duodenum, it's the superior one. Yeah, what the heck is that? Just look where the branches go. If it supplies blood to the distal colon, it's the inferior one. Same thing on this side. Oh, they're right next to each other. How do I remember? Well, look at the inferior one. It's supplying blood to the distal colon. Oh, so that means that's the superior one. I can see the branches supplying blood up here. So just remember your clues. And also, let's talk about portal vein first pass again. Talked about it before. It has to do with the liver circulation. Remember, there's no inferior vena cava heart in this picture. All the blood from all this, from spleen, large and small intestine, all the blood goes to the liver first before it goes back to inferior vena cava, heart. And so that's why this is called first pass. The liver is strategically situated to receive portal blood that drains abdominal organ supplied by the celiac trunk, superior, inferior, mesenteric artery, stomach, all of that is strategically placed to receive all that blood from all these things before it sends it back to the inferior vena cava. So it's called first pass because it must first pass through the liver. I'll just say it refers to portal circulation. Blood first passes through the liver, so the liver can do its job before it passes blood to the good old IVC. Hope you know what that means, inferior vena cava. So what you see here, let's just kind of look at this picture here. This picture here is pretty good. Both pictures are pretty good. Let's use this picture here to kind of map out some of these veins that drain into the portal vein. So here, remember this, it's going over the duodenum. That's it's superior mesenteric vein. Here's inferior mesenteric vein. There's a splenic vein. They're all merging together here to go to portal vein. So let's start with superior mesenteric vein. Let's draw it right there. Here's inferior mesenteric vein. Draw it right there. Okay. Looks like they're going to merge right there. Here's splenic vein. Draw it out there. So blood is all flowing up towards the liver. So that one is splenic vein. Here is inferior mesenteric vein. And this one is superior mesenteric vein. And they all merge to the hepatic portal vein, or just sometimes it's called portal vein. Okay, just don't confuse portal vein and hepatic vein. That's all I ask. Hopefully that little schematic helps you for the veins you got to know for first pass.